You hear a lot of people say, well, a strong family makes strong communities, but then they live lives or create laws that divide the family and pull the mom or the father out of the home and lock up the kids in institutions for 8 hours a day and do everything they can to divide the family up.
Welcome to the Stay at Work Home. We are here to question the prevailing assumptions about the meaning of life, work, and the purpose of people. Instead of being torn apart by our vocations, we want to be pulled together. Come along with us as we change our picture of the good life and pursue the home as God intended, one that worships through work together. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the podcast, the Stay at Work Home. I am Keith.
And I'm Becky.
And today we have a special guest, Robert Bortin, CEO of Classical Conversations. Welcome, Robert.
Keith and Becky, thanks for having me today. I'm glad to talk about the good life and how Classical Conversations might help you achieve it.
Awesome.
Hey, thanks for coming.
So Classical Conversations obviously is in the vein of classical education, particularly classical Christian education. And one of the distinguishing features of that is that we believe that there is good, there is truth, there is beauty, and we're not just teaching kids knowledge, but we're actually educating them on what is good. We're trying to inculcate virtue. So we're talking about the good life. Classical education seems like a good place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. We have to first have a definition of what is good to be able to educate children to. And modern education seems to think everything is neutral. There's what's good for your family might not be good for someone else's. And I just don't think the data plays that out. Just, of course, as a Christian, we know that the Bible defines what a good life can and should look like, and it's not necessarily what the world thinks it is. And so children won't naturally get there. They have to be intentionally raised, and classical education in general is the process of doing that. Even the Plato, who I necessarily wouldn't agree with on a spiritual level, still thought good was available and be able to be known. He just had a different set of gods that he looked for to define that, but still that obviously things like suffering and pain and things like that were bad. And how could we as a society, raise up a generation that would, be able to, of course, take care of us when we're in our old age, but also keep society going down a positive pathway. And so classical education is looking at those great thinkers for the last, 3,000 years or so. What did they believe? Why did they believe it? Reading their writings, not someone's interpretation of them, and just trying to see, the nice thing is when you look at someone who wrote something 3,000 years ago, we can see how it turned out. Versus modern thinkers, they might have different ideas, and we may experience the result of those ideas, or it might be our children or grandchildren. So ideas have consequences. Bad ideas have victims. I think right now here in the U.S., we are seeing that latter play out when students have depressions at an all-time high, anxieties at an all-time high. Students don't know how to pick themselves up anymore and brush themselves off and keep going. College sports teams have resiliency coaches because students aren't learning those basic things that parents taught them for the last few thousand years. And so classical education goes back to the roots of education, teaches you how to learn anything. And then when you put a biblical worldview on it, we believe that's going to help you have a flourishing life. And, people throughout the years would accuse religion of making the bad lives. Like if we could just get rid of religion, everything would be great. Well, America in some ways has gotten rid of religion in our public schools, and students can't even look down between their legs and know if they're male or female anymore. And so we're actually seeing that the lack of a religious background causes chaos and causes more anxiety and more issues. And so, we reject that notion that classical conversations, that education can, you're educating to some sort of virtue, whether it is chaos or, what the Creator, we believe, has destined for us as a humanity. And so therefore, no education is neutral. And that's part of the reason we see all this craziness going on around us.
Mm-hmm. So Have you seen this in the lives of graduates and people that are really influenced by classical conversations and the broader classical movement in general, that they're aiming for something different?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's, of course, some of them go on to college and get college scholarships, and we're proud of those individuals. But there's just as many who go on to be entrepreneurs or go straight into full-time ministry or take a gap year and, go overseas and serve. And so, we do a periodical, about every single year, we do graduate surveys asking them, some of the same questions you might see the government or asking adults, are you involved in church? Are you involved in, your local communities? Are you, are you happy? Those types of questions. And yeah, they're doing really well. Typically, whatever statistics you see out of the government of our young people doing poorly, you just kind of flip it on its head. And our students are doing the exact opposite. And so, you see something like less than 30% of recent graduates are still in church. Well, it's almost over 90% for classical conversation students. Marriage rates are at an all-time low in society and in new children, but our graduates are getting married and having lots of children. And so just generally speaking, obviously you've got, individual experiences that go one way or another. And, we're not perfect and we don't have not everyone who graduates is. But generally speaking, our students are flourishing. They're happy. They're, net benefactors to their community, whether it's their church or their work or politically. And yeah, they're sending their kids to classical conversations or homeschooling or thinking about doing it later once they get married. So yeah, we're very we don't lead with that type of data necessarily when we're marketing because a lot of it's parent driven. We can tell you the path which way you should go, but if you don't want to listen to us, you're not going to get the results that we think you can get. But absolutely, our graduates are flourishing in all aspects of society.
You mentioned flourishing. There is a standard for what that means. You could say flourishing means that you're passed out drunk in a ditch, I guess, but we probably don't mean that generally. So if we define flourishing, I mean, what do you think it is? You've mentioned some things.
Yeah. So, are they, happy? Are they, taking some sort of drugs, to get by? Obviously that would be not a flourishing life. Are they, involved in their community? Are they going to church? Are they involved in a civics groups? Are they, participating in elections? Are they employed? Or if they're not employed, are they, working towards some sort of employment, like, going to school or running their own business? Things like getting married, things like being involved with their family. Do they have a good relationship with their parents? Do they have a good relationship with their siblings? Those are the type of questions that we ask them. And then, just anecdotally, just talking with graduates and, people who know our graduates, even like colleges or universities who are actively recruiting, giving scholarships because they see that our students are, matriculating through their school, they're graduating on time, they're getting jobs afterwards. So, whether it's talking to individuals about their experience, all the time we hear about how, they're excelling at school or they got a promotion at work, and that, that they're actually maybe having trouble fitting in because, they want to be involved, that they want to do their schoolwork. They want to ask questions. They want to understand what the professor is saying. And so sometimes they get frustrated with their peers who are more just kind of drifting through life. So yeah, I think from individual responses to survey responses to third parties who are actively recruiting our students to go to their universities or trying to get them to work there at their businesses after they graduate, or talking to entrepreneurs who are now running their own businesses. I think there's a lot of different data points that all show what can be a flourishing life, what is a good life. And for us, obviously, it's involvement in your local church. You can have all those things, but if you're not spiritually doing well, then those things don't matter in God's economy. And so, just the fact that, over 90% of them are still involved with their local church after graduation, when, Christian students who go to public school but go to church regularly, they about 70% of them end up walking away by some standard, according to Barna research from the faith. So a big difference.
I love that you're bringing up too, like they're getting married, they're having children, they're choosing to educate their own children differently than the world. Mm-hmm. And I think I know your story a bit. I know your mom's story because you guys tell them to us all the time. But I think that you're an example of how this pouring in a homeschool environment has done something that has made your family flourish. So I wondered if you could speak to that a little bit, like even how, whether it's classical education or just home education, and how your mom and dad in the end making that choice affected your relationship as your family that you grew up with you and your brothers. But then also maybe even what has this choice to homeschool and to homeschool classically, how has that helped your own family to flourish personally?
Yeah, I think, well, I really enjoyed being homeschooled. I think, it's probably two of my three other brothers really enjoyed being homeschooled, and one probably tolerated it. So
that sounds like a fun story.
Well, he was more of an extrovert, I guess. But, we're all doing well, whatever that means, in the worldly, just, getting married, having kids, doing well at work, those type of things. But I think, for myself, having that closeness with my parents, being able to work with them, at classical conversations, and just doing different things around town that we're involved in, and having that relationship with my younger brothers is really good. And, with my wife, she's a product of the public school, and, her parents went to the public school and didn't think anything of it. And, just like many grandparents, not necessarily, they weren't detractors per se. Obviously they knew my background and what we were doing, but just, kind of skeptical, see it with their own eyes type people. And, just now, you can almost like hear them bragging to their friends about how their grandchildren are being homeschooled and the things that they're learning and the experiences they're having that they wouldn't be able to have if they're, were locked in, four walls for 8 hours a day, 180 days a year. And so, just having those experiences with my kids, being able to, just go, like, took them to Teen Pack the other day, which is like for the younger kids, is a 1-day event to learn about government up in Raleigh. I was able to kind of take off work and do that with them. My daughter's really pursuing gymnastics and is one of the top gymnasts in the state for her age. And, she's able to train during the day, and they actually have a homeschool class for the homeschoolers at the gym so that they can get more one-on-one attention. My middle son, Trey, he's really into robotics and Legos, and there's a robotics class that he goes to once a week, and they're teaching him how to program. And I don't know that he can quite read yet, but he's, programming robots to, he can mostly read, to, do different things. And he's telling us about those. So, and then our youngest, Jonah, he's just, probably all third kids get neglected a little bit because you're worn out from the first two, but even he's, the older two are helping him learn things, and my oldest daughter will help him, with a little bit of school, or, helping him get some things done around the house. So just creates a different atmosphere. It's really like homeschooling isn't necessarily about the academics that are getting done, although the academics tend to be done at a very high level, at least compared to other institutions. But it's about growing that family unit. And if you hear a lot of people say, well, a strong family makes strong communities, but then they live lives or create laws that divide the family and pull the mom or the father out of the home and lock up the kids in institutions for 8 hours a day, 180 days a year, and do everything they can to divide the family up. And so I think homeschooling is really just an opportunity and a lifestyle that models, what we believe the Lord made for the families, and just an opportunity to keep growing together. And, I think parents almost get more out of it sometimes than the kids, because we get excited about things that, maybe we glossed over when we were younger, or, we didn't really care about that much. So we didn't pay attention because we could, slide by with a B, but now we're just like, start getting excited about it. So It really does just create opportunity to love the world we're in a different way, and just kind of have more aha moments and experience that are just the world around us so much more than just being glued to a screen like we see so many people doing, right? They work a job they hate to buy things they don't need, and then they sit around and watch TV because they're just so stressed out and they just need to, deprogram from the day, but they just do it over and over again until they retire or have a heart attack and die or something. So I think homeschooling is just a whole way of looking at life that's completely different. It's getting off that consumer hamster wheel. Not that, I probably buy things that I don't need to buy more than my wife does. But
That's why God gave her to you.
you're not following the Joneses all the time. You're not
Right.
trying to keep up with your neighbors in their lifestyle. And I mean, if you think about it, it kind of makes sense. Like if you're going to be like a slave almost to your job 50 weeks out of the year, and you're only going to have 2 weeks vacation where you're going to spend that with your family, of course you're going to be more susceptible to diving into that consumer mindset and spending extravagantly on a vacation, because that's really your 2 weeks of freedom a year versus, homeschoolers. If at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday we want to go to the mountains, well, we fill up the car with gas and go check it out. Right.
That's right.
And so, we really take control of your own calendar. Your calendar is not being dictated by some bureaucrat in a state building or by your boss.
Right. I think something that I have noticed in homeschooling that I didn't think about ahead of time is that the things that I just naturally love, like I always loved reading books, all that. And while I had to work to teach my children to read, like their love for stories came very easily to them, because as I get to teach them to read and then read them stories, they catch that love just as, just so much easier than just maybe having to sit in a classroom with a teacher who's making them do book reports. Right. And that's what I grew up in. And yet I always wished I'd had more time. I was public school, and so was he, multiple generations of it. And, I really wished I just didn't have to go to school as much so that I could read more books. And so I get to live that life a little bit now. And now my kids, like, I don't have to really force them to read books. They enjoy reading books. It's their favorite part of their challenge programs is the books they get to read. So them learning to love the same things we love. And I actually think about you guys too, where as your mom was learning how to educate you guys classically, you caught on to that love so much so that you then took over the company she created in order to be able to train other parents to do that. So I kind of have this question for you. At what point did this classical education that obviously prepared you for college, and you went to college, but I'm guessing not for business management, which is kind of maybe if somebody had a title of a degree that you needed for the job you're in now, maybe it would be that or education. So what did you go to college for? And then what shifted to get you to where you are now?
Yeah, good question. A lot of people just assume that I was always going to work for Classical Conversations, and I'd like to tell people I was always going to homeschool my kids. Like just that experience that I had, that was like something that was really important to me as I was, looking for a woman to marry. But Classical Conversations didn't get started till I was in high school. My dad actually quit his job when I was in college so that my mom could travel more and he could be at home with my younger siblings. And so, they were bootstrapping it, so they didn't help me out with college costs, and I had to figure out how to pay it myself.
It's better for you that way anyway, right?
Yeah. So I actually would go to school semester and then work a semester, go to school semester and work a semester. So when I graduated college, I mean, my parents were taking a salary and they definitely didn't have any money to pay me and I had student loans and different things. Plus, we were the more, there was that many homeschoolers. So I kind of needed to prove that it worked for myself as well as for others. And so, after I graduated from Clemson with my industrial engineering degree, I worked while I was in school, I worked for Johnson & Johnson, one of their subsidiaries. So that paid pretty well, and that helped pay most of my college costs with a limited amount of debt. When I graduated, I worked at UPS for 11 months in their management training program. And then after that, I worked in a manufacturing company that took recycled tire rubber and turned it into garden products. And so, yeah, so I was the youngest plant engineer in that company's history, and they'd been around for like 60, 70 years, I think, at that point. And so, yeah, I felt like I was climbing the corporate ladder, getting good reviews, getting raises, things were going well. And then I'm the oldest, but I have brothers that are 12 and 15 years younger than I am. And so as they were getting into middle school and high school, my mom wanted to be able to spend more time with them because she had been traveling 30 weeks a year, building up, classical conversations and training parents and leaders. And so she wanted to be able to stay home more with them. So it worked out that I'd been around about 5-6 years in the business world, and the business I was in at that time was getting a lot of pressure from China. That was they were trying to spoof our products and try to sell them into the market, and so it just kind of came to a point where I had done what I could as an industrial engineer for them. I had improved processes, and things were going well, but yeah, I'd kind of done everything I wanted to do there. I'd worked there for 5 years, and my mom needed help at Classical Conversations, and they could actually, pay me a salary that was comparable to what I was making there and help me pay my bills. So, yeah, I came on board about 2012 or so. I had helped out a little bit in some different areas before that, but really that was the year I started working full time here in the home office, and spent a year kind of working with my mom and transitioning over and trying to learn from her what she was looking at and just running the day-to-day operations. And we went from, I think we were in about 40 states at that time, and now we're in over 60 countries. And so God has really blessed our family's business, and hopefully we've been able to help a lot of people know what it means to know God and make him known. That's what our tagline is at Classical Conversations. And we mean that seriously. And, we've helped hundreds of thousands, if not millions of families and students over the last 29 years or so.
Can I say something?
Okay. I got a question next.
I know. It's not a question, it's a comment. But I said to your mom before at some of our trainings, or maybe I just wanted to say to her, I'm not sure if I've actually said it to her, that yes, the Lord gave her these 4 boys, but she has hundreds and hundreds of women that call her their homeschool mom, right? Like she is parented us and taught us so much. And you guys have in CC that I could see that God could have directed us towards homeschooling another way, maybe. But there are ways that I have grown, and I hear her speak often about, it's not just about these kids. It's really about these families. It's about these parents pouring into parents so that parents are then able to pour into their children, not just for one generation, for generations. And I just, just imagining where this all began, that your high school years, and how the Lord has used the seed to spread wonderful fruit, and not just fruit in an academic or even just for the power of homeschooling, but to grow our family, to grow our faith. Like, I think our faith has been just the Lord has used classical education to grow our faith and our trust in the Lord, the trust in his word, our ability to study his word and to know it more, and to feel confident that everything he brings to us in this world, it is something to learn more about him and how to make him known. So anyway, that's I love your mom. So
I apologize for my wife geeking out. Just kidding. All of the geeking.
I love my mom too.
She's we're all fans. I mean, you're a fanboy of your mom, I guess. But I forgot what I was going to say. Well, I'll skip to my question. So you had mentioned something earlier about sort of that the inculcation of virtue is taught to some extent, but it's also just caught. And so when we have had the public school system the way it's been, with the age segregation, you end up with the kids having this, this fellowship with their peers that they don't share with anybody else. Well, the same thing is to be said of the husband and the wife. They're segregated. They're separated from each other during the day for most of the week. Same thing's happening with the kids. And you also said that a lot of homeschoolers are becoming entrepreneurs, which I think within, I don't know, maybe it's just that I'm in the reformed ghetto, but I see this all the time. Tipping, that's where we're at, and other people too that we listen to, that we know. There's a recovery of this idea of a productive family, but it's very hard because of regulation, because of just the way the world is oriented systemically at this point, to put an 8-year-old to work in your family business to some extent, right? And there's just so many industries that's very resistant to that. But are you seeing that sort of return and that sort of ethos to not be consumers that just get together to have fun on Saturday, but actually live together during the week producing?
Yeah, I mean, I think as you mentioned, there's all sorts of roadblocks that's been put up by the civil government to stop the family government from working efficiently and effectively, because the devil loves it when he can put responsibility in areas that God never ordained to be responsible for that thing. I do think there's a lot of people trying to answer that question now, and a lot more than in the past. I think one of the benefits of some of the improvements in technology is a lot of people are having more opportunity to do that. More people can work from home full time, even not as entrepreneurs. Obviously, if you own a machinery business or something, it's probably gonna be a little bit difficult to have your 7 or 8-year-old working on in there. But for something like our family, trying to figure out how to incorporate them in, whether it's coming to events and just being polite, or being in the photos for the catalog. One of the things that I'm trying to do at home is teach the kids that money's not just like handed down, or it doesn't come from a tree or a bank. And so instead of giving them an allowance, they have a job board at home, and if they want to make $1, they can go grab the job board. And it's of course they have their chores that they have to do because they're members of the family, but if they want $3, they can go clean one of the bathrooms, and they go grab the job and they go clean the bathroom, and then they go put it in their folder for the week. And then on every single Friday I pay them for the jobs they do. So my kids are 10, 8, and 5. So that's one of the ways I'm trying to get them in their brain that, you don't get things by asking your dad to buy them, or waiting for a holiday or Christmas or grandparents, but that they can go do it themselves. And so, I probably pay them a little bit more than I would normally, give them in an allowance or something like that. But I also haven't cleaned the bathroom since I started doing that about a year ago.
Good stuff.
So there's other ways to do it too. And I think more and more, like you said, families are trying to bring them in and do that. And I mean, there is the nice thing about being an entrepreneur and owning your own business. There is more lax legal rules around hiring your own kids to be involved. But you should definitely look into that if you're a business owner. And a lot of times, like my wife, she makes earrings and sells them at a local bakery, and our daughter helps make them with her, and decorate them, and picking out different things and putting the backings on and gluing. So even like that's they're not necessarily bringing in a ton of money with it, but it's teaching my daughter the value of hard work. It's teaching them how to produce something beautiful, negotiating with business owners, refilling inventory, what's selling well, what's not doing well. So, I mean, they're, we're not buying a new car or anything because of that, but, it's a way to, get them involved and seeing that you can do well by serving others.
Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with David Bahnsen?
Yeah, I'm a little bit familiar with him.
So he's really kind of vocally pushed back on the remote work recently, and kind of, I don't know, done a little dance every time some big company has come out. Like Jamie Dimon came out and said, I'm freaking Zoom, or something else close to that. And just making everybody come back to work. I understand, the pushback to some extent. There's some advantage from the company side of doing that. But I mean, also, how much are we is that just people sort of having taken the post-industrialization, consumerism, which I think ultimately Marxism weaves in quite well. Actually, Marx thought it wove in quite well. The whole paradigm, and just sort of missing the forest for the trees there, and the bigger problem of what this does to the family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think David is considered in the Reformed realm. I believe he is.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just think he makes money by selling and buying stocks that are driven by consumer mindsets. And so he has a disconnect. His own pocket forces him to disconnect from the realities of what God would have our economy look like, because that's how he makes his money.
I would love to have a beer or two with David. I'm sure you would too.
I almost disagree with him because I follow him on an X, and I try not to fight everyone on Reform Twitter like most people. But him and I don't find it useful. But him and I got into it. I said all these billionaires basically make money because they're the biggest welfare queens on the planet, and he was like, "No, they're doing it through their own hard work." And then, of course, like a year later, we get this USAID stuff coming out, and you see all these government contracts, and you're like, pretty much all these rich people are rich because the government forced taxation and redistribution into their own pockets. So
it's happening.
I think I was proven right. I mean, so yeah, I think he's naive in some things, but I mean, quite frankly, I'd rather have his economic worldview be more centralized than the world's. Like, he's closer than 90% of the other people that are out there. So, I don't really, not trying to fight with them, but I think he misses the mark sometimes.
He's got this book. It's been out for I don't know how many, maybe 6 months now, called Full Time. And from a theological perspective, I mean, he talked a lot about Tim Keller's book on work and how much he appreciated it. And then he, after really covering his bases on praising it, then he said, but it should have gone this far, or further in this direction or whatever. I can't remember exactly the details of the difference, but valuing work for the sake of work, because it's our primordial calling, which is kind of the basis of this podcast, actually, as that relates to the family, but really valuing that work. And certainly we should not despise that Western civilization with, the mercantilism, the financial system, all this stuff has enabled a great deal of productivity so that man can effectively be producers, workers and keepers, dominion takers, all this stuff. I personally, just from an aesthetic point of view, and sounds like you do too, you're like, yeah, dude, you're just shuffling money. He's shuffling money so that we can better do other stuff, I guess. But there's something, I think, aesthetically wrong if you don't see that going to an office in like 5 different cities 5 days a week. I'm not saying he's doing this, or whatever the thing is that's totally disconnected from family, is just an undermining of creational order. And we're missing what the good life is, right?
Yeah.
I might make all the money in the world and I miss the good life.
Yeah. So I'm involved with this group called the C12 group. They are like entrepreneurial. It's kind of like, for those familiar with Classical Conversations, like a challenge group, but once a month with a group of Christian peers. And they've talked about BAM, which says business as a ministry, and the fact that God never called a part-time disciples. God gave us work to do before sin. Work being hard and not being fun was a result of sin. But God worked, and then He gave it to us, so it's not part of sin itself. And that there's no sacred secular divide, that we're Christians 24/7, 365. And so I think part of for Christians that business is a ministry. I'm even thinking like we need to take this farther to I'm calling it life as a ministry. Business is part of life, and our entire life should be our ministry, and that even dividing it into business and those things are I think it's helpful. It's a great framework, but doesn't go quite far enough. And so at our office, we always try to think like, if our families that work for us, if they're not healthy, then we're not going to be getting a good result, the best result we can from them. If they're not flourishing, like if we're yelling at them because they got to go take little Johnny to a 3 p.m. dentist appointment and saying they can't, have to take their vacation days or, whatever. I mean, obviously you got to be wise there, not let him abuse it. If Johnny always has a vacation, every single day he has a 3 p.m. But I mean, I think you've got to look at it, bigger, and certainly there are people who are abusing the work from home. Halfway joked that I should have been applying for a bunch of different jobs just because you could get hired and not actually do anything.
5 of them at the same time.
5 of them at the same time. I have a friend. He's definitely not a believer. Was working 2 jobs, transitioning from one to another, and he said, I'll just keep working remotely till they fire me. Which
Wow.
I said you should probably quit. And so I mean, there's definitely people doing that. Even people that I was aware of. But I think thinking that you have to see someone that make them work. I mean, that's just obviously part of the fallen world, and micromanagement. I mean, obviously the people in our warehouse who ship and pack our books have to be here.
Mm-hmm.
But if the IT person needs to work from home on a Thursday because his mother's coming into town, well, we're not going to force him to come to the office for that day. So I think, you have to be able to you have to have wisdom, and you have to be able to do both. But I'm sure it's probably not the best for a Fortune 500 company's bottom line to have tens of thousands of people working remotely who may or may not be doing their job.
Well, it's part of the scaling, right? I mean, the bigger something is, the more difficult accountability is, and the less direct connection the employee has to the reward they're getting from whatever they've produced or not produced.
Yep.
But something we talked about recently, I guess it was with David Frazier, was with employment versus working for yourself. It is kind of the difference between slavery and freedom.
Well, a lot of it is mental.
Slavery,
Well, a lot of it's mental, and a lot of it's just based on tax rules. I mean, why do you have a Social Security number? Because the government treats you almost as your own business. And so even like when you're an employee, and really you're just you have sold your time for a certain amount per year to do a certain job. And even them, in some senses, you still are an entrepreneur. You have just become very, you have one customer, and you've agreed to do whatever they tell you to do whenever they tell you to do it. And so, I mean, of course, I worked when I was at Johnson & Johnson. We had a guy who was kind of in charge of maintenance. And he kind of got sick and tired, and so he quit, and he started his own business, and then he just sold his services, his business services, to Johnson & Johnson. And sure, he was making a ton more money because now he owned the company, and they didn't necessarily have want to do that thing internally because he had that expertise. And so, obviously, like as a business owner, I'm glad I don't have, contract negotiations with 170 people, every single day on what I'm, that would be very, that would grind the business to a halt really quickly. But on the same token, I think there's always trade-offs. And so obviously when you're an employee, you're kind of trading off, you're allegedly securing freedom for security, right? You're saying, I know you're going to pay me every 2 weeks, as long as the, company's not stealing, obviously like doing stuff that's illegal. They have, a track record. They've been around for so many years. If you're obviously a publicly traded company, you can see what's on the balance sheet and some of those things. Maybe you're getting company options, you're getting stocks or something like that. So you are participating in some of that upside. So I think there's definitely ways, and I think smart business owners try to find ways to help their employees think about entrepreneurship inside the business. So one of the things that we have for, our 170 employees is we have a thing that we call pay for performance, and it's based on your scorecard and company profitability. And so after our shareholders get a return, the rest of it split 60% with the employees and 40% with the shareholders in the profits. So, once, basically 60 cents on the dollar after a certain threshold goes to the employees. And so that's quite a motivator of them. Sometimes, ending the quarter, I'm like, look, every dollar we make the rest of this quarter, 60 cents is going to go back into your pocket, so they know, that motivates them to find that money. And so, sometimes they're like, hey, Robert, can we spend, $1,000 on this? And I'm like, well, it's coming out of your bonus. So if you think it's the best way for the company to make money and you'll get a bigger bonus because you'll spend this money, then great. And then so they, start thinking like, okay, if we spend $1,000 on this ad campaign, is that going to drive more profit so that we have more to split among ourselves? Or, oh, maybe that ad campaign, maybe I shouldn't spend the money on that because it's not going to actually, I'm not as confident as I was a minute ago now that you're putting it that way. And so that's some of the things we've tried to do inside our business to help those, 180 people think like entrepreneurs, is making sure that they're sharing in the upside of if we are financially successful that quarter or that year.
This is an interesting question. Like, I really appreciate how you are looking at employees as saying, well, they can still function as an entrepreneur with just one client, right? That is, that's
mental.
It is a mental perspective. And Keith and I have often talked about like, how does this perspective we have on life, the stay at work home mindset, how can it actually apply to somebody who works in a cubicle? And I think you just hit on some really helpful things. And it reminds me a little bit too of, if you have a mental state of an employee, it's that stays as an employee forever and never really takes ownership of their employment and of their own business as their own person. Instead, they're dependent constantly on this employer for all of the good that comes in life, rather than thinking of it in those terms. We often, with our education, those of us that were spoon-fed through the public school system, whatever it was they wanted to feed us, that once we became adults and had to actually figure things out on our own, that learning comes a lot harder than if we had been trained to take that ownership early on. And that all of education from the youngest age is actually, it's not just about getting the thing done. When we homeschool, we actually, the kids are part and parcel. They're taking ownership of it, even at little ages, but really, in our challenge classes, we really begin seeing that happen when they get to that 12, 13-year-old. And I had a gal in one of my classes one time who had come right out of the public school, and she was a great student in the public school, but just some things were not going well socially. Well, when she came to classical conversations and to homeschooling, she really struggled because I didn't have like very specific metrics for every day of her week. She had to actually begin to make her own schedule work with her mom to figure out what her pace should be. And honestly, she didn't like it. She really wanted that continual, like, this is what you do next. This is what you do next. And so I think that mindset that we're trained in our industrialized education model translates into the workforce. And then we're going to stay in this same job with tiny incremental moves up as somebody continues to spoon feed us, rather than thinking of ourselves as free people, because we are. I mean, once Christ has set us free, we are free. But we are people who are capable of really doing just about anything, so long as we don't put or consider ourselves constantly in chains, And so even an employee then, and I think that's a helpful mindset. Even that employee can think of themselves as a free person who is choosing for this time, for some season, or even for all the time, to have that one client. Yeah, I like that.
And that dovetails into education with like the liberal arts, right? That's what he's doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Trying to teach them, and not just readings. Again, like most people are going to read not, Dante's Inferno, but some professor's synopsis of it and have a discussion of it versus going to read the original source documents and things like that. And so that's what we try to do as part of the liberal arts and the classical education is instead of really surveying modern education, you're surveying, a mile's worth of information, but only going an inch deep. Well, we're only going to look at 4 or 5 pieces of ground, but we're going to go a mile deep. And then once you learn how to do that with all the layers, well, you can go to any other piece of dirt and figure it out, because you've been trained to how to look, how to research, how to think through these different issues or different opportunities versus just knowing a little bit about a lot. You can, there's some benefit there initially, but once you kind of hit that first rock, you're not sure how to get around it, and then you're just feeling stuck. And then, your high school counselor doesn't doesn't know all the jobs that are out there, and they certainly don't know all the jobs that are going to be out there for 8-10 years from now. So, that there was nobody that told me. I mean, of course, I was homeschooled, so I didn't have one. But they don't tell you that you can go, be a wine connoisseur, or go how to, go do all these, different jobs or opportunities that are out there, or how to serve people. It's, like you said, it's very industrialized. It's the whole point of it is to figure out the managerial class versus the obedient class. And businesses, to an extent, like especially in depending on the industry, like someone who wants to know what to do next and will just keep doing ABC over and over again for 40 years of their lives until they retire. But most people aren't going to find that they're living their best life after, if they ever wake up out of their stupor. So I think for those of us who know better, trying to wake others up, and and always just trying to do better each day. Like, none of us are perfect, and we each will find ourselves in whatever circumstances we are today. But how do you make a plan to get out of those circumstances, or a plan to make your lives better? And there's it's always funny because most people they're going to work 40 hours a week for someone else, but won't go spend 12 to 20 hours additionally that week working for themselves, trying to get out of that 9 to 5 circus. But most people, if they would just do it for 2 or 3 years, could find a lot more freedom, not just financial freedom, but freedom to do what they are called to do more often without having to ask permission from a boss or a bureaucrat.
Yeah. So maybe as a parting thought, something I've asked a lot of people you've interviewed has been, what's a book that you would recommend? One book and one piece of music.
Oh, all right. Well, the book's easier, especially for business. Traction by Gino Wickman, EOS. You've probably maybe heard of that. But we've been running classical conversations on the EOS model since 2019, and it's really revolutionized at least the inside of our business, and hopefully it's made it so that we support families like yours more effectively, and can keep trying to keep costs down as much as possible, even through all this crazy inflation. And hopefully he's getting over with. And then music, that's
DC.
I tell people I have trouble playing the radio. Like, I'm the least musical person out there. So
Greg Wilbur didn't have a problem with this question.
No, I like, our church, being Reformed, we sing a lot of psalms to some really powerful music. So
Nice.
I just appreciate singing those, and just thinking about that. But yeah, there's probably no good music that I can listen to or recommend.
Okay. We got plenty.
I listen to a lot of audiobooks.
Oh, they're great.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what was it? Was it Aristotle?
Or you could say the timeline song.
Yeah, the timeline song. I don't want to give any CC parents who are past that phase any.
The 100 Years' War and Black Death. I forgot what I was going to say. Oh well. But that was great.
Music's important. No, see, look, the devil was in charge of music. That's why I don't like it.
There it is. He was the choir leader, right?
Oh, and you didn't get foundations, so you didn't get
No.
all of those years in that classical music
I did not.
that our kids are getting, that your kids are getting. They just listened to Handel's Water Music this semester. Yours did, so it's, and our kids love that one. So
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Robert, for coming on, and I'm sure you'll run into her another training thing or something sometime.
I'll probably see you in Chicago.
Yes, I'll be in Chicago. I was just looking at that today. So thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, thanks.
I
for
really
coming.
appreciated all that you guys are doing, and keep up
We
the good
appreciate
fight.
We appreciate you too, and everything Home Office is doing for all of us. So thanks a bunch.
If you've enjoyed what you've just heard, please subscribe and share. Also, check out our website and blog, stayatworkhome.com. This episode of the Stay at Work Home is brought to you by heartlandbunkies.com. Come check out our full line of small cabin kits that can be easily assembled by a few friends or family in just a weekend for extra space for meaningful connection, or extra income, or a home office, a homeschool room, or whatever.